Welcome to the summary for Discussion 5, Genetic Approaches to Conservation. In this summary, we will look at genetically based conservation strategies, managing genetic diversity in populations, and the importance of genetic diversity for conserving species. In the video introduction to wildlife conservation genetics, we learn that genetics can be a powerful tool for scientists studying threatened species. Scientists have been able to develop less invasive methods for collecting DNA samples from individuals, making genetic analysis more attainable. Primack discusses the natural extinction of species over their evolutionary course, but that humans have sped this up to 100 times the natural rate. Other topics discussed include the 50-500 rule, genetic variability and genetic drift, outbreeding depression, and inbreeding depression. These lead to a loss of ability to adapt to naturally changing environments. Flather considers how the minimum viable population, or MVP, is important because it offers a look at necessities for genetic diversity of a population that is being studied. Originally thought to be 5,000 regardless of species, now MVP is species-specific and considers length of life cycle and threats to the population. Lastly, Bokit discussed the role zoos can play in conserving genetic diversity and how this focus has changed over the past century as zoos moved from the ARC paradigm to a more education and research-based program. In recent years, zoos have taken an active role in field conservation while also keeping focus on the genetic variability of the species in zoos. In the discussions for Option A, many people found they had difficulty when playing the Matchmaker game from Minnesota Zoo. There were losses of genetic diversity, and players had to resort to higher levels of inbreeding than they would prefer. Many students also focused on specific species. Jennifer Classon focused on the American bison reintroduction through the Bronx Zoo in New York. Recently, the bison were reintroduced into the wild through their partnership with Yellowstone National Park. Jennifer discussed the process of embryo implantation as part of the recovery process. Both Morgan and Emily Ducey discussed efforts to safely house populations such as the Panamanian golden frogs at the Brookfield Zoo and Tampa's Lowry Park Zoo, while wild individuals are facing problems. In the wild, populations of Panamanian golden frogs are fighting an epidemic of chytridiomycosis. Emily Reese discussed the Many Species Survival Programs, or SSPs, the Toledo Zoo participates in, as well as the reintroduction programs for the Karner blue butterfly, a federally listed species native to Ohio. Anne and Jennifer Fantasia mentioned western lowland gorillas, a species suffering from habitat loss and poaching in the wild. Within zoos, these gorillas are part of the SSP, so the captive population can continue to have genetic diversity, similar to the process used in the Minnesota Zoo game. Anne specifically talked about the loss of Harambe at the Cincinnati Zoo over the summer, and how his death decreased the availability of his genetics towards the SSP population. Under Option B, students discussed specific species in decline and how zoos or other organizations are working to recover these species. Angie Dill discussed the Hawaiian crow, known as alala, which has gone extinct in the wild with 114 individuals in a captive breeding program at bird conservation centers. This species is not a charismatic macromammal, like most of popular media conservation focuses on, but is important to its local environment. The alala disperses native plants, is important to Hawaiian culture, and is considered to be an intelligent creature capable of using tools for foraging. The decline of this species is due mainly to an increased spread of avian malaria with mosquito population increases, and the spread of toxoplasmosis by feral cats introduced to the islands. The population originated from 9 founders and suffers from inbreeding depression, low genetic variation, and genetic bottlenecking. Hannah Webster talked about the vaquita in her post, a small marine mammal found only in the northern tip of the Gulf of California. This species is facing threats from being bycatch and gillnets in commercial shrimp trawls. Hannah mentioned the potential for captive breeding of vaquita, but that moving the animals left into captivity poses a risk some do not want to take. With very few individuals left, the current trend of the vaquita is towards extinction. Without immediate action to reduce the loss of individuals as bycatch, the species will continue to lose genetic diversity and its ability to recover. Courtney Good brought up a species that we are currently seeing go extinct, the northern white rhino. There are only 3 individuals left in the world, 1 wild male and 2 captive females, mother and daughter. The loss of this species is mainly due to heavy poaching. With so few individuals left, there is not enough genetic diversity, and the only hope left is the preservation of these animals' DNA in the frozen zoo in San Diego. Research is ongoing to successfully create offspring with different genetics, and hopefully this can be done in the lifetime of the current population. Angie Pittman talked about the bottleneck effect that Hawaiian monk seals faced during a period of intense hunting in the 19th century. The seal population has the lowest genetic diversity of all mammals tested and is still listed as critically endangered. Ongoing efforts include captive rehabilitation and translocation to safer areas. Other species mentioned include the Micronesian kingfisher subspecies, black-footed ferret in the Midwestern U.S., western pond turtles in Washington, cheetahs throughout Africa, and red wolves in the southeastern U.S. Conservation of species has made progress since the early 1900s. As zoos become the basis for conservation efforts, SSPs are reaching to different countries to increase genetic variability within the captive populations held in zoos. While it is sad to see so many suffering species under the influence of the human population, it is heartening to learn of so many projects focusing on saving species. As these species are being saved, scientists are learning more about the genetic diversity across species, and we are also seeing that programs instituted to save a specific species have the ability to spread conservation efforts to the habitat, helping save other species nearby. This summary was developed by Jessica Mokultis, Sarah Pittman, Katie Robertson, and Ashley Welch.